The original K-Tel Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Over here I've got a few videos that my wife Marnine worked on. Here I've got a lot of videos that the Something Weird company in Seattle put out in the 90s. And the boss said, look, just pick, half a dozen of your favourite videos if you want and take them home with you. And
that's awesome.
They call us tapeheads, a nostalgic breed of video hoarders. Join me as I take a look at some of the most insane collections. Search the wild for that next rare find. And bask in the glory of VHS.
For the past 20 odd years I've been working as a freelance writer, film, pop culture, true crime related books and articles and such. Always been a film lover, always loved horror films pretty much since I was a kid, horror, science fiction, fantasy. Got into VHS I guess in the 80s like a lot of people in my generation, just initially through hiring videos every Friday night, every Saturday night, became part of almost like a ritual for a lot of people around my age. Probably about 18 when I, first started hiring videos. I guess initially I wasn't all that interested because a lot of the films that the local video store got in were, Sound of Music and stuff like that, I wasn't really all that interested in. It wasn't until a bit later on when a lot of those companies like Starbase and Palace Explosive, etc. started showing up, and a lot of the more obscure stuff came out that I hadn't really even heard of at the time, because I grew up reading magazines like Famous Monsters of Filmland and Starlog, but a lot of these obscure, exploitation drive-in films, they weren't even covered in those sort of magazines. So it was like discovering a whole new genre, I guess, a whole new sort of field of film. Got a part-time job at a shop called St Kilda Video, and that was just like a little mum and pop shop. I worked there for about 2 years on weekends and after school, and when that sort of eventually closed down in about late 1988, the boss said, look, just pick, half a dozen of your favourite videos if you want and take them home with you. And that was probably my first video collection. I grabbed Blood Feast, Palace Explosive, When You're Coming Back, Red Rider, Roadshow, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, K-Tel.
K-Tel Video, your home of entertainment, presents more great titles from Filmways VTC.
The original K-Tel Texas Chainsaw Massacre, one of the videos I kept from St Kilda Video when I left. It's a bit of a classic. This had the great trailers for Shocking Asia.
Does this have the Alien Terror?
Alien Terror, yeah, and the Ninja Mission, I think, was the other one, yeah.
Yep. Is this the original case?
I think it was, yeah. I think that's like a double-sided sleeve with Ninja Mission on the other side, yeah. Over here I've got a few videos that my wife Marnine worked on. This was Hellhole, a fairly sort of notorious and obscure 1985 exploitation women in prison film. Only recently finally came out on Blu-ray and DVD in the US, and a couple of photos of Marnine on the back there. And there was a couple of other things, Bloody Wednesday that she worked on, which is again another low budget film from the late 80s that was loosely based on the infamous McDonald's gun massacre that happened in San Diego. The Gauntlet, the Clint Eastwood film that she did a great stunt on, jumping off the moving train. And a UK sell-through of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, in which she stunt doubled the female star of that movie. Here I've got a lot of videos that the Something Weird company in Seattle put out in the 90s. At one period for about 6 or 7 years I was doing a bit of writing for them, writing the blurbs on the back of their VHS and DVD covers and for their catalogue and website. So yeah, obviously these are pretty sort of important to me in a way, just because they're something that I was actually involved in. They put out a lot of great stuff like the classic sex change film, Let Me Die a Woman, Campus Swingers, educational things like driver education films that were, those classroom scare films from the 60s that tried to show kids the consequences of unsafe driving, and graphic footage. And
that's awesome.
A lot of the VHS tapes obviously used really lurid original art, whereas when they put them out on DVD and Blu-ray, they tend to just get, artists to do new artwork for them, or they just use cheap sort of photo collages, and takes away a bit of the appeal, I think. It's kind of like why I collect, the vintage paperbacks as well, just for the great cover art on them. It's getting to that age now where it's something that's part of, a lot of people's childhood for several generations, kids of the 80s, the 90s, and I guess early 2000s. A lot of them have great memories of sitting around with family and sitting around with friends and drinking their first beer, watching things like Evil Dead and, Reanimator, stuff like that, and it brings back just nice memories for a lot of people.
My name's Darryl. I'm from Ontario, Canada, and I like to collect VHS, and Betamax video cassettes. The bulk of my collection are mainly horror titles. I do have other genres mixed in, but I stick to mainly horror movies. Those are where I like the most. And mostly rare stuff, so uncommon titles you don't see that get a Blu-ray or DVD release. Also, I like to collect Canadian distributor Astral Video, the big distributor here back in the 80s. They put out most of the Canadian content. I've been doing this since about 2007, and it's pretty fun. I've met some pretty cool people and learned a whole lot about film and video distribution. Thanks for checking out my collection.